Hey guys, it's me, Swarple, and this is the second time I'm recording this because I forgot to record my screen the first time.
Hey, Edding Swarble here, and I am so sorry for the garbage quality for the audio in this video. I recorded the entire thing and then realized I didn't have my mic plugged in, and I would re-record it, but I recorded it live while drawing, so I'm worried that if I tried to re-record it, I would sound really stilted or it wouldn't time up properly with what you're seeing on the screen. So really sorry about the audio quality. I feel terrible. I know audio quality is really important on YouTube. That's why I got the mic, so really sorry about that. All right, on with the video.
So, a long time ago, back in the olden days, somebody asked me about layers. They said they knew the buttons to press to make layers and everything, but they don't know how to use them to their advantage when making art. So, I decided to walk through coloring a piece so that you can see just how much layers come in handy because this is the stage where layers really come in handy. But you'll see right now that this already has quite a few layers. So there's a reason for that. Basically, if a layer is kind of like when people paint on a canvas. So they'll start, with paint, they'll lay down some paint, wait for it to dry, and then start a new layer of paint. The thing is that with digital art, you have a ton of advantages with layers because anything you do on one layer will not affect the other layers. So for example, I have sketches here that you can't see. I'll turn them on with this little eye icon, and you'll see that I drew all of this before doing the inks on top. So when I did the line art, I traced over on a different layer here on these layers, multiple layers. And usually what I do is even with pencils, if I'm drawing, say, like someone's arm, like here, yeah, I was drawing his arm, but it was behind her. And I liked the sketch that I had done for her, and so I thought if I mess up on his arm, I don't want to have to erase her as well as the arm. So I just put the arm on a different layer than her, so that way if I messed up on the arm, I would only be erasing and fixing the arm. I wouldn't have to worry about erasing the pencils for the girl. And I'll probably be talking about these characters in some future like webcomic vlogs when I start those, but that's not what this video is about. Um, so we're gonna do coloring, and yeah, you're gonna see really what you can do with all this. So what I start with is a gradient that looks really loud and messy, and I will warn you, coloring usually looks pretty bad until you finish. So that's just a thing. That's just, an unfortunate reality. You're like, does this look good? It looks like trash. But then when you finish, you're like, oh, it doesn't look like trash anymore. So basically what a lot of people do when they paint, I learned this technique in a digital coloring class in college. But mind you, my coloring technique might not be the same as everybody else's. Everybody has a different process, but I'm just showing you what you can do with layers. So my digital coloring professor, he used to paint his stuff traditionally. So when he learned how to do digital art, when you paint in real life off a computer, you usually paint down a gradient first because paint is thin. So no matter what you do, there's going to be a little bit showing underneath the paint unless you've got pure black paint. So what they do is they paint a gradient from the lightest part of the, I'm going to make a new layer so that I can draw this, from the lightest part where the light's coming from to the darkest part where the darkness is. And I might actually redo this gradient really quick. So, I'll delete it. Just make a new layer. Do this, and I'm gonna have it be like a sunset. I'm gonna have the light coming from this direction. So there you go. And basically, what it does is unify the colors later. When I put the colors on top, you're gonna see what I'm talking about. But no matter how different the colors are, they're all gonna be slightly united, and the viewer isn't going to notice. So I'm gonna turn this layer off first because what I can do with Clip Studio is, again, layers. I'm gonna make a new layer. I'm gonna make it over the background but underneath. the character line art. And so basically what I'm going to do is, so firstly I do separate color layers for the characters and the background, so that again I can avoid having to deal with both of them. If you just want to be able to be like, when I fix stuff later, I only want to fix this layer, then make a new layer. It's, you have almost infinite layers except on Procreate, but this is Clip Studio Paint. So what this can do is it'll fill in, if I use this option with the paint bucket to refer to other layers. It means that even though this is on a layer with nothing on it, like there's nothing on this layer, so if I say to refer to only this layer, the layer that I'm editing, it's going to fill the entire thing in blue, this blue color. But if I tell it to refer other layers, even though the inking isn't on this layer, it'll still fill in only the hair there. So I'm going to start out doing that, and I'm probably going to speed up the footage because, and these are old drawings of them, by the way, so they're not that great, but also I think these were the first drawings that I did with these characters when I was redesigning them, because they were old characters from high school, so the references I had for them were very old and very not good compared to what I can do now. So then I redesigned them, and now I'm drawing them much better in this drawing. So I have their palettes here. That's what I'm going to do, is color pick. And then looks like it was already the right orange. So her hair is orange, I'm going to fill it in, and that's basically what I'm going to do for a while now. No, I don't want to do that. So I'll speed up the footage so that, you're not sitting here watching me do this for an extended period of time. See you soon. Alright, I'm back. So I flattered everything, and it doesn't, it'll definitely look better when it's finished. But you'll see what I'm talking about now with the other. I did not ink. I'll just. Sorry. Hopefully this will be good. I'm on the right layer, right? You do want to make sure you're on the right layer, because you will see, like, drawing on the wrong layer. You might have seen jokes about it online, that all artists know the pain of doing something like inking a drawing and then realizing you were on the pencil layer. So that means you gotta do it all over again. You gotta undo all the inking and then ink all over again, and it stinks. So that's why I tend to lock any layers that I'm not using, because that makes sure that I can't draw on them, and it'll tell me, like, you can't draw on this layer, it's locked, and then I'll realize I was on the wrong layer. So that helps a lot. So you're gonna see what I'm talking about here with the layer, with the gradients. So, oops, right. Keep making some mistakes. It's easy to forget that something that's white hasn't been colored white yet. Alright, so the gradient layer is on now, but like, we can't see it, so what's the point? We're gonna do something called lowering the opacity. So basically, you can make a layer super invisible or super visible. Right now it's at 100, so it's 100%. So there, you can't see anything underneath it. However, if we lower it just a little bit, if you pay attention, you're able to see a little bit more of the background color. And so that's what I'm going to do. It's mimicking the paint is thin thing. So without knowing it, you're, like, the viewer is seeing a little bit. You can see over here that the I'm just going to do this. That this looks slightly more orange than this green over here. And this looks slightly more orange and slightly lighter than this over here. So this definitely helps unite all the colors in a way that's not noticeable. And so we're going to do it with the characters as well. Let's see. Okay, so it's the same with this. You can see it now. You can see this is lighter than this. So the light just seems to generally be applying to everything in the drawing now. So that's good. We have the flatting done. Now that means it's time for shading. So what you never want to do is use the airbrush tool to shade. There are a couple people who can do it. They sometimes do it with comic book artwork when it comes to the superheroes and stuff, because it's kind of like the classic way that they've always looked. But those guys know a very particular way to do it, and as a general rule, you don't want to do it, especially if you don't want your comic to look like a superhero comic, because it's sort of highlight of superhero comics. So people are going to think superheroes if you do it like the superhero comics. So because I have a cartoony art style, I do what's called cell shading. So instead of making it look gradual like it is in real life, I just cut things off pretty easily with, you know, the darker color. Except I'm not doing a darker color like her hair here. Let me draw on the canvas again. Her hair here. I'm not just going to pick a darker orange and then color with the darker orange. That's not going to look as interesting. The thing is, shadows, and even in real life, you just want to enhance it in, you know, artwork so that it looks cooler. Shadows have their own color. They're not just black or gray, so they're not just a darker version of the color that's already there. They have their own light. So what are we going to do about that? So I'm going to pick a color, and again, this is sort of like a free-for-all thing. I do want to make sure it's dark, and in certain cases I might darken the color, like in certain colors, like the color I picked, the original color, might not be dark enough to show up as shading on some objects, or it might be too dark and it'll make it look like they're in like really bright light, and so there's big contrast. But to start off with, because the dark color is sort of this color, I'm going to start with this here. We'll start with this. Maybe make it a little bit bluer. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. But then it's like, well, that's just going to be like a blue color on top. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new layer, and we're going to use a mode. So there's all kinds of modes you can use for layers, and they'll change how things look. So we'll go over the ones that I use the most real quick. For this shading thing, I'm going to use something called hard light, which sounds weird because light, but if you do a dark color with hard light and go over, you can see that kind of makes it that color, but it's good for shading. And right, in fact, I'll use it in here. So you'll see that this is now darker, kind of has that green color. And I might actually change it for underneath that hood, because the red color, it looks kind of weird. So I might make it darker, might make it a different color. That's all fine. You can change stuff a little bit. But generally, I don't shade by adding like this. Like you'll see some people do that. I don't do that. And this is a personal thing, because I have a hard time shading, because I don't want to go too, like when I used to shade with pencils traditionally for art classes, I never went dark enough. That was what my professors and teachers in high school, they would always tell me, you're not going dark enough, and it was because I was scared to go too dark. And so I do a similar thing when I shade like this, even digitally. I'm going dark with the color, but I'm doing like this. Like just the very edge has some shadow. So we're not going to do that. Instead, what I do is I dump the color on everything. And then we're going to use the magic wand tool to select only this part. So any erasing I do isn't going to erase from anything else. It's just in this area that's outlined by like the weird dots, the dotted line. Oop, the eraser's too big. Let's see if this works. Yeah, this is good. So the light's coming from this way. We're going to say the light's coming from this way, from over here, over from the top right. So that means we gotta let it hit. Since I'm going to be doing more of this, I think I'm going to skip. I don't really have much more to say about it, so I'll skip until I'm doing the light part, the parts that are being hit especially by the light. So I will see you guys then, and I'll speed up the footage. I'm back. So, we have shaded them. I think it looks pretty good. And now we gotta hit the highlights, which you would do if you were drawing traditionally or painting traditionally or whatever. It's where the light is hitting the characters the most. So, or the everything in the drawing the most. So I'm gonna pick another color because obviously light has a color. We can all agree on that one. And so I'm gonna pick, because of the whole sunset thing and the color that I chose before, a more this kind of color. And we'll see. Again, I can always change it if I feel like it's not enough or it's too much or whatever. And so instead of hard light, because hard light would make light too hard, let's see if I can show you guys that. Hard light would be too hard. It would just be the same color. You don't want to do that. So we're instead going to set it to overlay. I'm not super knowledgeable on how or why this stuff does what it does. Looks like it's very similar on the... Oh no, it's still on hard light. I was like, wait a second, this is fishy. You can see it's a little bit different, and you'll see on things like, as it changes slightly depending on, see it's black color, it doesn't look entirely like, so you'll see that it changes and it's pretty good. So that's essentially what we're going to do, is we're going to add the highlights, and those are a bit softer but very quick. I think I'm just going to show you guys the layer modes that I use the most. Let's just put, let's put it here, and we'll just change the mode and you'll see. And I use them for different things. So these are the ones that I use the most. Multiply is sometimes used for shading. It just doesn't give as much color. Obviously with this light color it's not as effective. So I used to use multiply for shading, but then one day, because I started shading differently, and then one of my professors straight up told me it just didn't look good. He said it looked like somebody who didn't know how to color, which hurt, but it was legit feedback and it was true. So I tried to brush up on doing this kind of shading, and got found a video where they used the hard light mode instead, and I liked that a lot better. Then screen can make things a lot lighter, and it can be good if you're trying to make something glow. If you have like an airbrush or whatever and you're trying to make things look glowy. Although it also has glow dodge, but I don't really use glow dodge. Sometimes, I more often now use add glow, because I think more of the color gets preserved, and I do like color, like more saturated color, which can be my downfall sometimes, is I make things too saturated. That was my downfall a lot of the time. I would abuse certain color modes too much and make them super crazy. So yeah, you can see there's a little more color in the add, which both add and add glow would work pretty well. So a soft light is what I am going to use at the end of this, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And you could probably also use this for highlights, but I tend to use overlay. I've used vivid light a couple times, but almost never. That's about it. So you can totally play around with other layers, but that's mostly it. And so I will do the lighting part and then I'll get back to you as we wrap it up. So, see you once again. You're gonna see what I'm talking about. And you can technically make them two different gradients, but usually I just make them the same gradient. So obviously you can't see anything. But if you change it to soft light, this. Now we don't want it to be that strong. So remember, this is what it looks like without any. If we put just a little bit, it'll also unite the colors some. Now be very careful with it. It's a little goes a long way. I used to really abuse the soft light layer on top, and it was too much. It was like eye strain. I really like really saturated colors. My brain can handle really saturated colors, but you don't want people who can't handle it as much to not be able to look at your work because it's so saturated. And it honestly just doesn't look as good because it gets to the point where everything just looks like one or two colors. You still want to show the variety of colors, just slightly unified. So that's where I'm gonna end this. I hope I helped you out a little bit. I hope I helped the commenter, assuming they didn't just get tired of how long I was taking and just bail and go find, somebody else's tutorial or whatever. But this is how I color. It really shows, I think, just how much you can do with layers. And this isn't even it. There's so much stuff you can do with layers. But I hope that you can see what layers can be used for, that they're a really, really handy tool, and they are your best friend because they help you avoid making mistakes that are, crap, I made this mistake and now I screwed everything up. You don't have to worry about that when you use layers. They're very nice. Usually, if I do a comic, sometimes it gets to like almost 100 layers. That just happens because you want to separate so many things. If you do like an environment, you usually want the sketch to be underneath on a separate layer underneath the character sketch, so that if you mess up the environment sketch, you don't start erasing the character sketch as well. That would stink. So I hope this helped. If you liked this, like the video. If you've never found any of my videos before, you should check my others out. I have one other tutorial, but mostly speed paints and a bunch of memes. But I hope you guys were helped out by this, and I'll do hopefully more tutorials in the future. And if you have anything you want to learn about that you're confused about, put it in the comments and things like that. So have a good day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.